Invisibility becomes a weapon when wielded correctly. Wealthy men treat servers like breathing furniture, extensions of the table settings, necessary but unseen at Azure, Manhattan's most exclusive private members club. That invisibility kept Simone alive. It also meant she witnessed everything. The hand that lingered over the whiskey decanter. The crystalline vial concealed between perfectly manicured fingers. The prismatic silver shimmer as powder dissolved into $1,500 Japanese whiskey. She counted in her mind. 1 second, 2 seconds, calculating the precise dosage. Enough to shut down a billionaire's nervous system. Enough to lock a man inside his own flesh while his kingdom crumbled around him. She should have turned away. Should have refilled champagne flutes and collected her tips and returned home to her son. But she watched Kang Minho reach for that glass. Watched his long fingers wrap around the crystal tumbler. And she made a choice that would obliterate everything she'd constructed to remain invisible. Welcome to Cora Storytales, besties. Please like and subscribe because what happens next will leave you breathless. The December snow blanketed Manhattan's financial district with the kind of brutal cold that turned breath to vapor and sent taxis sliding through icy intersections. Inside Azure, winter's rage couldn't penetrate. Here in this converted Gilded Age mansion on Park Avenue, warmth pooled like amber beneath Art Deco chandeliers. Edison bulbs cast honeyed shadows across walnut paneling. The air held notes of aged leather, rare bourbon, and secrets worth more than most people's annual salaries. It was a perilous place for a fugitive to work. But Azure was the only elite establishment in Midtown that paid exclusively in cash and never ran electronic background verification. It was the only place a ghost could afford rent. Simone Laurent pushed through the kitchen's double doors, her tray balanced with the muscle memory of 4 years spent invisible. Kitchen heat clung to her brown skin, mingling with aromas of seared A5 Wagyu and white truffle pasta. Her feet ached inside the mandatory black flats. But she'd mastered compartmentalizing pain the same way she'd mastered compartmentalizing everything else. Survival demanded it. Being a single mother operating under false documents demanded even more. At 31, Simone had perfected the art of vanishing. Black vest buttoned over crisp white blouse. Natural hair smoothed into a low bun, so severe it eliminated any trace of individuality. Posture calibrated to signal service without submission. She moved through the dining area like smoke, present when required, invisible otherwise. For years of this. For years of serving plates to men who discussed billions over appetizers while she mentally calculated whether she could cover her son's winter coat. But tonight felt wrong. She couldn't identify what had shifted in the room's energy. But her instincts, sharpened by years of analyzing pharmaceutical compounds for contamination and reading men for threat levels, screamed warning. She'd learned to trust that internal radar. It had saved her life before. When she'd fled Genesis Pharma 30 seconds before security arrived to arrest her for stealing her own formulas. Simone glanced toward the main entrance while delivering plates of sushi oysters at table 8, her hands steady despite tension coiling through her spine. That's when she saw him. Kang Minho entered Azure the way apex predators entered territory they'd already conquered. No fanfare required. At 36, he moved with calculated economy that suggested every motion had been optimized for maximum efficiency. His midnight Brioni suit draped across shoulders that spoke of disciplined combat training, not recreational fitness. Black hair swept away from a face that married brutal precision with something timeless and unyielding. Ink crawled up his throat from beneath his collar. Traditional Korean imagery marking him as both old world and lethal. But his eyes stopped Simone's breath. Obsidian, relentless, perpetually calculating. They scanned the room in one comprehensive sweep that cataloged exits, vulnerabilities, assets, the assessment of someone who'd learned early that survival meant observing everything first. Simone had served powerful men before. New York manufactured them industrially. Wall Street psychopaths, political operatives, tech moguls still drunk on their own press releases. But Kang Minho occupied an entirely different category. She watched the maitre d' straighten reflexively, watched the sommelier materialize without being summoned, watched subtle tension ripple through the staff like current through water. This wasn't wealth. This wasn't even power. This was fear wrapped in a $7,000 suit. Simone knew exactly who he was. Kang Industries, the Korean pharmaceutical empire currently acquiring Genesis Pharma in a hostile merger. She'd spent 8 months obsessively monitoring every player in that acquisition, every executive who might recognize her face from her previous existence. Kang Minho's photograph had burned into her memory during those paranoid research sessions. The Wolf of Seoul, they called him. The youngest CEO to ever weaponize patent law into a corporate dynasty. The man whose company now controlled every formula she'd ever developed, including the ones that could destroy her. She observed from her station near the bar as he was guided toward the private dining room and back. The Azure room, reserved for guests who valued discretion above ambience. The room seated 14 but had been configured for 6 tonight. Simone had drawn the assignment 3 hours earlier when Marcus, the floor supervisor, had cornered her with unusual gravity. Table 1 tonight, Simone. Flawless service. Total discretion. Understood? She'd understood. Some tables required more than confidence. They required silence. Now, as she prepared the spirit service and verified the table arrangements one final time, Simone forced her breathing to regulate. Her son Jordan was home with Miss Chin, the neighbor who provided childcare at rates Simone could barely manage. Jordan would be asleep before Rachel's shift concluded, bathed and read to and tucked in by someone else. Again. The guilt lodged in her chest like concrete, heavy and permanent. But guilt was an indulgence she couldn't afford. Every hour she worked here bought another hour toward the medical school acceptance letter hidden in her apartment. Every tip went into the envelope under her mattress, gradually accumulating toward a future where she could use her real credentials again, where she could be more than a phantom. She just needed to stay invisible, stay silent, stay protected. The private dining room felt more intimate than its actual square footage. Intimacy achieved through deliberate architecture rather than limited space. Wine-colored walls absorbed light from the single-statement chandelier, creating shadows that gathered in corners like pooled oil. The table could accommodate 14 but had been dressed for 6. Each setting positioned with mathematical precision. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Park Avenue, but heavy silk curtains could isolate the room from the external world completely. Kang Minho sat at the table's head, back against the wall, a position providing sightlines to both entrance and windows. His fingers rested on a water glass he hadn't touched. His eyes tracked everything with the patient concentration of someone who'd learned to interpret violence in the silence between statements. 4 men occupied the remaining seats, their conversation pausing as Simone entered. "Good evening, gentlemen." Her voice struck the professional balance, pleasant without warmth, attentive without personality. "May I offer spirits while you await your final guest?" "Whiskey," said the man to Kang Minho's left. A silver-haired executive in his 50s whose bespoke suit couldn't quite conceal the softness of inherited privilege. Vincent Morrison. According to the reservation, Genesis Pharma's outgoing CFO. The Yamazaki 18-year. Simone nodded, moving to the spirit station with practiced efficiency. She felt their gazes assess her, dismiss her, return to their discussion. Perfect. Invisible was precisely where she needed to be. As she decanted the whiskey with steady hands, their voices created a low-frequency backdrop. Carefully coded references to market consolidation and strategic portfolio optimization that anyone with pharmaceutical experience recognized as corporate predation dressed in business casual terminology. She'd participated in these conversations before, back when she'd attended them instead of serving them. She didn't care about their business. She cared about pouring whiskey, collecting her compensation, returning home to Jordan. But something compelled her to glance at Kang Minho as she filled his glass. He wasn't engaging in the conversation. Instead, he was observing her with an intensity that made her fingers tighten imperceptibly on the bottle. His expression revealed nothing. No hostility, no curiosity, just observation. The kind of watching that catalogs details and archives them for future application. Simone met his eyes for a fraction of a second before looking away, professional mask secured. She completed the pour and retreated to her station near the entrance, ready to respond but otherwise invisible. The final guest arrived 19 minutes later. David Chin entered with apologies about traffic, shaking snow from his Burberry coat. Mid-30s, with the polished assurance of generational wealth and Yale law. His handshake with Kang Minho seemed genuine, almost brotherly, and he took the seat to Kang Minho's right with comfortable familiarity. Apologies for the delay. David accepted the whiskey Simone poured. The FDR has traffic backed up to the Bronx. No concern. Kang Minho's voice was smooth, controlled. The first time Simone had heard him speak. We were merely discussing transition timelines. Simone returned to her position, but something nagged at her attention. She couldn't pinpoint what precisely. Perhaps the way David's smile didn't reach his eyes. Or the subtle rigidity in his shoulders despite his casual demeanor. Or how the other men's conversation had transformed when he arrived, becoming more performative somehow. She dismissed the thought. Not her concern, not her problem. The dinner proceeded with the careful choreography of high-stakes dining. Simone brought courses. Yellowtail crudo, butter-poached lobster, dry-aged strip loin that cost more than her monthly rent. She refilled glasses, cleared plates, responded to requests with efficient professionalism. The men's conversation flowed around her like ambient noise, their words sliding past without leaving marks. Except Kang Minho kept watching her. Not overtly, not in a way the others would detect, but Simone had spent years interpreting subtle indicators. The microscopic shift in posture signaling someone needed something. The slight head turn indicating readiness for the next course. Kang Minho's attention on her was different. Assessing, curious, almost. It generated nervousness she couldn't name. The incident occurred during the main course. Simone was refilling water glasses, moving counterclockwise around the table. She developed a rhythm to service, efficient but unhurried, present but unobtrusive. As she reached for Kang Minho's glass, she noticed David Chin reaching across the table. Except he wasn't reaching for anything on the table. The movement was subtle, rehearsed. His hand passed over the whiskey decanter for less than 3 seconds, barely perceptible. But Simone saw the tiny vial concealed in his palm, saw the almost imperceptible tilt as something fell into the amber liquid with a shimmer that made her blood freeze. Silver, prismatic, unmistakable. David's expression never changed. His other hand was indicating a merger document spread on the table, directing Vincent's attention to some provision. The entire action consumed perhaps 4 seconds. Simone's heart stopped. Time slowed to viscous seconds as her mind raced through impossibilities. She could be mistaken. Perhaps she'd imagined it. Perhaps it was something benign. Medication, a supplement. But that shimmer, that specific refractive quality when exposed to oxygen. She knew that compound. She'd spent 9 months perfecting it in a Genesis Pharma cleanroom. Compound 73. A neurotoxin so precise it could induce locked-in syndrome. Complete consciousness, zero motor function. A chemical prison that transformed the human body into a tomb while the mind screamed inside. And she was watching Kang Minho reach for the glass, his fingers closing around the crystal. Her hands didn't shake as she continued around the table. Years of service had trained her body to move automatically while her mind calculated frantically. Call for help. No time. Alert Kang Minho directly. That would position her in the center of something that could obliterate her. Walk away. Let him drink. Let him become a breathing corpse. Let whatever corporate war this was play out without her. The image of Jordan flashed through her mind. 7 years old, missing his 2 front teeth, obsessed with dinosaurs and bedtime stories. Jordan, who needed his mother alive and invisible and safe. But Simone also saw Kang Minho's face. The human being about to consume poison. Unsuspecting. Her body made the decision before her conscious mind registered. As she circled back to Kang Minho's position, Simone's elbow caught the edge of his water glass. It was a perfectly executed accident. Clumsy enough to seem believable. Forceful enough to ensure the glass toppled directly into his lap and across the table toward the whiskey. Ice water cascaded across Kang Minho's suit and splashed into his whiskey glass. Oh God. Simone's shock was genuine, even if the action wasn't. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Kang Minho stood immediately, brushing ice from his lap. The conversation at the table stopped dead. Vincent laughed, a booming sound that fractured the tension. Occupational hazard, my friend. But Kang Minho wasn't laughing. His dark eyes fixed on Simone with an intensity that made her breath catch. Not angry exactly. Surprised, perhaps, and something else she couldn't identify. Something that resembled recognition. It's fine, he said quietly, his voice carrying an edge that silenced Vincent's laughter. Accidents happen. Let me get towels, Simone said, already moving toward the kitchen. I'll bring fresh linens and replace your whiskey immediately. In the kitchen, her hands finally shook as she grabbed napkins. Marcus materialized at her elbow, face creased with concern. What happened? I spilled water on table 1, Simone said, fighting to keep her voice steady. I need fresh linens and a new whiskey glass. Marcus' eyes widened. On Mr. Kang? It was an accident, she said firmly. I'll handle it. She returned with towels and a fresh place setting, acutely conscious of all eyes on her. Kang Minho had resumed his seat, expression unreadable. Again, my apologies, sir, she said, laying out fresh linens. Let me get you fresh whiskey. As she reached for the contaminated glass, Kang Minho's hand moved swift and precise, catching her wrist. Not painfully, but firmly enough to halt her motion. Simone froze, pulse hammering against her ribs. Leave it, Kang Minho said softly, his eyes locked on hers. It wasn't a request. Simone nodded, stepping back. She watched, heart racing, as Kang Minho pushed the whiskey glass aside, out of easy reach. Then he turned his attention back to the table, back to business, as if nothing had occurred. But something had occurred. Simone knew it. And from the sudden tension in David Chen's shoulders, the slight pallor beneath his tan, he knew it too. The wolf had seen the poison. And now he was looking at the woman who'd saved him, his gaze dark with questions that could destroy everything she'd built to stay hidden. Welcome back, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. Before we dive deeper, make sure you're subscribed, smash that like button, and tell me where you're listening from. I love seeing our dark romance family stretch across cities, countries, and time zones. Every click, every comment, every bit of engagement you share here helps us keep unraveling these dangerous love stories and high-stakes betrayals together. So find your cozy corner, dim those lights, and settle in. Let's continue. For years ago, Simone Laurent had been someone else entirely. Someone with her real name, a corner office, and security clearance that granted her access to compounds that could rewrite human neurology. Someone who'd made the mistake of being brilliant in a system that rewarded theft over innovation. Someone who'd trusted the wrong people. But that was before Genesis Pharma, before the patent war, before she'd grabbed her son and disappeared into the kind of poverty that rendered people invisible. Before she learned that sometimes the only way to survive predators was to become prey so insignificant they forgot to hunt you. Now that invisibility was shattered. Kang Minho's grip on her wrist burned like a brand as he pulled her through the kitchen. Not painful, but absolute. His fingers circled her bone with the kind of control that suggested he knew exactly how much pressure separated restraint from damage. The kitchen staff parted like water, eyes carefully averted. Marcus opened his mouth to object, saw Kang Minho's face, and closed it again. The December cold hit them the moment they stepped into the alley. Brutal and punishing, it soaked through Simone's vest in seconds, plastering her white blouse to her skin. Kang Minho didn't seem to notice. He walked with purpose toward a black Range Rover idling at the alley's mouth, its windows tinted dark enough to be illegal. The rear door opened before they reached it. Not by Kang Minho's hand, but by someone inside. Someone watching. Simone's survival instinct screamed. Entering that vehicle meant crossing from public into private, from witnessed into disappeared. She dug her heels into the wet pavement, water pooling around her cheap shoes. Kang Minho stopped, turned, looked at her with those dark, assessing eyes. "You can walk in," he said quietly, his accent barely perceptible, soul polish smoothed by years of American business schools. "Or I can put you in. Your choice. I didn't do anything wrong." "No." Something flickered in his expression. Not quite amusement. "You did something very right. That's the complication." He guided her into the Range Rover with a hand at the small of her back. A gesture that might have appeared courteous to anyone observing. But Simone felt the steel beneath the civility. The promise of force held in reserve. The interior smelled of leather and something darker. Gun oil, perhaps. Or the particular chemical signature of someone who understood violence intimately. The door closed behind them with the heavy finality of a vault ceiling. The driver didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge their presence, just pulled smoothly into traffic. The snow-slicked streets reflecting neon and headlights in rivers of light. Kang Minho sat across from her in the rear-facing seat, close enough that their knees almost touched in the confined space. The proximity was deliberate, Simone knew. Designed to intimidate, to crowd, to make her feel the weight of his attention. It worked. "Who sent you?" His voice was conversational, almost pleasant. That made it more terrifying. "No one sent me. I work there. I'm a server." "You're lying," he said it without heat, stating fact. Servers don't recognize military-grade neurotoxins by sight. They don't calculate dosage ratios in 4 seconds. They don't commit deliberate sabotage with that kind of precision. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, closing the distance between them until Simone could smell his cologne. Something expensive and clean with an undertone of sandalwood. "So let's try again. Who sent you and what do they want?" Simone's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced her voice steady. For years of hiding had taught her how to lie. "I didn't sabotage anything. I spilled water. It was an accident." "An accident." Kang Minho's lips curved. Not quite a smile. "You collided with the table with enough force to knock over a glass, but not enough to disturb a single document. You aimed the spill to contaminate my whiskey specifically. Not the decanter. Not the water pitcher. Not any of the other glasses within reach. That's not clumsiness. That's training." Damn. He'd seen everything. Cataloged every detail while she'd thought him distracted. "I saw him," Simone said, changing tactics. "The truth, or at least part of it. Your general counsel. I saw him put something in your whiskey." Kang Minho went very still. The kind of stillness that predators achieved before striking. "What did you see?" "A vial. Small." He palmed it, tipped powder into the decanter while everyone was distracted. It had a shimmer to it. Silver, prismatic. That's not normal. That's not rohypnol or some amateur poison. That's engineered. "And you know this how?" The question hung between them, sharp as a blade. Simone weighed her options. Lie, and he'd see through it. Tell the truth, and she'd expose herself to the man whose company had been hunting her for 4 years. She chose middle ground. "I used to work in pharmaceutical research. Before. I recognized the refractive properties. That compound is a paralytic. Specifically, it induces locked-in syndrome. Full consciousness, zero motor function. You drink that, you become a prisoner in your own body while someone else controls your empire. Kang Minho stared at her for 3 heartbeats. Then he laughed. The sound was dark, humorless, somehow more frightening than his earlier calm. Impressive, he said. You identified compound 73 from a 4-second glimpse in low light. Most toxicologists would need a mass spectrometer. He tilted his head, studying her with renewed intensity. You want to know something interesting? I saw it too. Simone's stomach dropped. I've known David was compromised for 7 weeks. I've been taking microdoses of the antidote to build immunity. Tonight was supposed to be the endgame. I drink the poisoned whiskey. I feign paralysis. I observe who he contacts. Then I destroy them. Kang Minho's voice went soft, deadly. But you ruined it. You spilled my whiskey, destroyed the evidence, and alerted David that I know. For months of planning. Gone. Because you decided to play hero. I didn't know. No, you didn't. He leaned back, the leather creaking under his weight. Which makes you either incredibly brave or catastrophically stupid. I haven't decided which. His eyes held hers, dark and unreadable. So now you owe me a debt. You cost me my traitor. You're going to help me identify who he's working for. I have a son. I can't just disappear. Then you should have considered that before you collided with my table. Kang Minho pulled out his phone, typed something with quick, precise movements. Your son Jordan is 7 years old. He's with Miss Chin tonight. Apartment 3B, building on Amsterdam and 94th. He likes dinosaurs and stories about T-Rexes. He's missing his front teeth. Simone's blood turned to ice. How do you? I know everything about everyone in that restaurant the moment I decide they're relevant. You became relevant the second you touched my whiskey glass. He pocketed his phone. Miss Chin will keep Jordan overnight. She'll be paid triple her usual rate and informed you had to work a double shift. Your son will be safe, fed, and asleep by 9. You, however, are accompanying me until we determine what happens next. And what if I refuse? Kang Minho's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them. A door closing. A choice made. You're too intelligent to refuse, he said quietly. Because you know I'm not the villain in this scenario. You saw David poison me. You saved my life whether I requested it or not. That makes you complicit. That makes you a liability. And in my world, liabilities either become assets or they become complications. He paused. I don't think you want to be a complication. Not when Jordan's safety depends on you making intelligent choices. It wasn't a threat. Threats were louder, cruder. This was a statement of reality, delivered in the same tone someone might use to discuss weather. Simone looked at the tinted windows, at the city sliding past in the snow. She thought about Jordan's laugh, about the envelope under her mattress, about 4 years of running. She thought about the man across from her, who'd seen poison coming and planned to drink it anyway, who moved through the world like violence personified. Where are we going? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear. My penthouse. We're going to determine exactly who you are, Dr. Laurent. And then we're going to decide if you're worth keeping alive. The Range Rover turned north, heading toward the towers that dominated Manhattan's skyline. Toward a world Simone had abandoned. Toward answers she wasn't certain she wanted. And across from her, Kang Minho watched her with eyes that missed nothing, calculated everything, and promised consequences she couldn't yet imagine. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a glass tower overlooking the Hudson River. Kang Minho's security escorted them through a private elevator that required both biometric scan and numerical code. The kind of redundant protection that suggested paranoia born from experience. The doors opened directly into a space. No corridor, no buffer between public and private. Simone stepped into a world of cold luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the storm raging over the river. Lightning forking across black water. The interior was all clean lines and brutal minimalism. White marble floors, black furniture, art that appeared expensive and deliberately uncomfortable. No photographs, no personal touches. A fortress designed by someone who trusted nothing and no one. Wait here. Kang Minho disappeared into an adjoining room, leaving Simone alone with the security guard who stood by the elevator like a statue. Young Korean with the ramrod posture of military training. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her presence, just stood there. A reminder that she wasn't free to leave. Simone's wet shoes squelched on the marble. Her blouse clung to her skin, translucent now, her black bra visible beneath the white fabric. She crossed her arms over her chest, shivering less from cold than from the reality of her situation. She'd walked into a trap baited with her own good intentions. Kang Minho returned wearing different clothes. Black jeans, a charcoal sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. He dried his hair, combed it back. The informality made him appear younger, more dangerous somehow. The tattoos on his neck were fully visible now. Traditional Korean imagery that wrapped around his throat like a collar. Dragons and phoenixes and something that might have been flames. He tossed her a towel and a bundle of fabric. Bathroom's there. Change. We need to talk, and I'd prefer you weren't dripping on my floor. The bathroom was larger than Simone's entire apartment. White subway tiles, heated floors, a rain shower that probably consumed more water per minute than she used in a week. She dried off, peeled out of her soaked uniform. The clothes he'd provided were men's. A white t-shirt and black sweatpants, both oversized. She had to roll the waistband twice to keep them up. No bra, no underwear that fit. She felt exposed, vulnerable. When she emerged, Kang Minho was standing by the windows, phone to his ear, speaking rapid Korean. He glanced at her, his eyes tracking from her bare feet to her damp hair, and something flickered in his expression. Then he turned back to the storm, finishing his conversation in a tone that suggested he was issuing orders, not receiving them. He ended the call, pocketed the phone, faced her. You said you recognized the compound. Prove it. I told you what it was. I don't believe you. He moved closer, each step deliberate. Because the compound you described doesn't exist in any public database. It's classified military research. Level 6 clearance. Fewer than a dozen people worldwide have seen the formula. So either you're lying about what you saw or you're lying about who you are. He stopped inches away, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Which is it, Dr. Laurent? Simone's breath caught. He knew her real name. Not the fake identity she'd been using at the restaurant. Her real name. How long have you known? Since I ran your photograph through facial recognition during the car ride. Simone Laurent, formerly lead chemist at Genesis Pharma's Special Projects Division. Specialization in neuropharmacology with emphasis on cognitive enhancement and targeted paralytic agents. You disappeared 4 years ago. 48 hours before federal investigators raided Genesis for patent fraud. Warrant out for your arrest. Corporate espionage, theft of intellectual property, industrial sabotage. He paused. But what interests me is what you took when you ran. Because my forensic accountants have been attempting to reverse engineer those formulas for 4 years and they can't. The research notes you destroyed were the only copies. You're the ghost chemist. The one who escaped. Your company stole my research, Simone said, her voice low and fierce. Every compound I developed, Genesis sold to the highest bidder without crediting me, without compensation beyond my salary. They erased my name from every patent application. So yes, I destroyed the notes. Yes, I ran. Because I wasn't going to help them weaponize my work. Noble, Kang Minho's tone suggested he found nothing noble about it. Also stupid. You're worth 9 figures to me, Dr. Laurent. Dead or alive. Preferably alive since I need that brain intact. He stepped back, giving her space to breathe. But here's your complication. The whiskey you spilled on my table. I need to know what was in it. You claim it was your compound 73, but I need proof. Because if David poisoned me with something you invented, that means you're connected to whoever's trying to eliminate me. And that makes you either an asset or a threat. Simone's mind raced. The whiskey was gone, soaked into linen and cleaned up by restaurant staff. No evidence remained except my vest. It splashed on my vest. Kang Minho's eyes narrowed. You're certain? I felt it. Cold, wet on my hip. Some of it hit my vest before I moved. She met his gaze. Get me a basic chemistry setup. Household items will suffice. I can analyze the residue. And if you're lying? If you're stalling? Then you'll know. And you can do whatever you think you need to do. She lifted her chin. But I'm not lying. I saw what I saw. And if that compound is in my wine stain, you'll have your proof. For a long moment, Kang Minho studied her. Then he pulled out his phone, sent a text. My chef has the items you need. You have 30 minutes. The kitchen was professional grade. All stainless steel and imported appliances. The chef, a petite woman with silver-streaked hair, had already arranged the basics. Bleach, vinegar, baking soda, hydrogen peroxide, food coloring, pH strips, and a collection of small glass containers. She departed without a word when Kang Minho dismissed her. Simone stood at the marble counter, staring at her whiskey-stained vest. Her hands trembled slightly as she cut a section of the fabric, dropped it into a glass dish. She could feel Kang Minho watching her from across the kitchen island. His focus absolute. She worked in silence. Muscle memory taking over. Mix the reagents. Control the variables. Observe the reactions. The compound she'd invented 4 years ago had a specific chemical signature when exposed to oxidizing agents. If it was present, the solution would turn a particular shade of blue. Cobalt blue. Distinctive and unmistakable. She added the final reagent, waited. The solution turned green. Simone stared at it, her stomach dropping. That's impossible. What's impossible? Kang Minho's voice came from directly behind her. He'd moved silently, his chest nearly touching her back as he looked over her shoulder. It's not compound 73. It's. She ran the test again, triple-checking her work. Same result. Green, not blue. It's not a paralytic. It's a genetic marker. Bioluminescent tagging compound. Military grade. Meaning? Meaning David wasn't attempting to paralyze you. He was marking you for tracking. Satellite imaging probably. This compound binds to DNA, makes your cells illuminate under specific wavelengths. Someone could track you anywhere in the world. She turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close he was. She could smell his skin, clean and warm. Could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Someone's coming for you. Not to eliminate you. To take you. Kang Minho's jaw tightened. Who has access to genetic markers? Government agencies. Black Ops divisions. People who make problems disappear quietly. She paused. You said you knew David was compromised. You didn't say by whom. I assumed corporate espionage. Rival company attempting to steal the Genesis merger. His eyes held hers. But this isn't corporate. This is something else. How did you recognize it so fast? The difference between a paralytic and a marker? He was still standing too close. His presence overwhelming in the confined space of the kitchen. Most chemists would need days of analysis. Simone's heart hammered. This was the moment. Lie and maintain her cover. Or tell the truth and expose herself completely to the man whose company had been hunting her. Because I invented them both, she said quietly. Compound 73 and the genetic marker. They were part of the same research project at Genesis. Neural mapping and targeted tracking. I developed them simultaneously. I know the chemical signature of every compound I've ever created. She held his gaze. I'm not just the ghost chemist you've been searching for, Kang Minho. I'm the scientist who built half the biological weapons your company is attempting to reverse engineer. Including the one that just got slipped into your whiskey. The silence stretched between them, charged and dangerous. Then Kang Minho smiled. It was a terrible thing. Beautiful and predatory. Well, he said softly. This just became interesting. Kang Minho made 3 phone calls in rapid succession. His Korean sharp and commanding. Simone understood enough of the language to catch the keywords. David Chin. Immediate location. Containment, not elimination. He was mobilizing his security apparatus. The network of eyes and resources that made him dangerous. When he finished, he looked at her. David is running. He departed the restaurant 12 minutes after we did. Credit card shows a charge at a convenience store near LaGuardia. He's attempting to flee the country. You can track his credit cards? I can track everything. He moved to a laptop sitting on the coffee table, opened it. The screen displayed a map of New York with various dots pulsing in red. My people are already moving to intercept. But I need you with me. Why? Because you understand the science. If David tagged me, he's working for someone who needs me alive and traceable. That's either government or something worse. I need to know which. Simone's phone buzzed in her pocket. The cheap burner she used for emergencies. She pulled it out. A text from Miss Chin. Jordan asleep. All good. Strange though. Someone paid me extra. She looked up to find Kang Minho watching her. I keep my promises, he said. Your son is safe. But you're staying with me until this is resolved. I never agreed to that. You agreed the moment you spilled my whiskey. His voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. You're involved now, Simone. Whether you want to be or not. They took a different car this time. A black Audi sedan with tinted windows and a driver who looked former military. The snow had lessened to flurries, the city streets reflecting street lights in wavering ribbons of gold. Kang Minho sat beside her in the back, his thigh pressed against hers in the confined space. He was typing on his phone, coordinating his people with the efficiency of someone accustomed to command. How many people work for you? Simone asked. Enough. He didn't look up from his phone. Kang Industries employs 16,000 people across 7 countries. But my personal security network? That's smaller. More selective. More illegal, you mean? Now he looked at her, one eyebrow raised. I operate in gray areas. My father taught me that the law is a framework for people who can't afford to write their own rules. His eyes held hers. Does that bother you? Yes. Good. You should be bothered. You should be terrified. You're in a car with a man who could make you disappear and no one would ask questions. Your survival instinct should be screaming. It is. Then why aren't you fighting? Because fighting won't save me, Simone thought. Because men like you don't respond to resistance. You respond to value. And right now I'm valuable because you need me, she said aloud. And I need you to identify who's using my research to hunt you. That makes us temporarily aligned. Kang Minho smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. Intelligent. I appreciate intelligent. They found David Chin in a parking garage near LaGuardia's Terminal B. Kang Minho's people had boxed him in. 3 cars, 7 men, all dressed in dark suits that screamed private security. David stood beside his Tesla, hands visible, face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Kang Minho exited the Audi with lethal grace, Simone following a step behind. The garage smelled of motor oil and exhaust, every sound echoing against concrete. David. Kang Minho's voice carried across the space, conversational. Going somewhere? David swallowed hard. Minho, listen. I can explain. Explain how you poisoned me. Explain how you've been selling intelligence to my enemies. I'm listening. Kang Minho stopped 12 feet away, hands in his pockets. Relaxed. Dangerous. It's not what you think. David's eyes darted to the security personnel, calculating odds. I'm not your enemy. No? Then what are you? CIA, David said it like a confession. I'm CIA. I've been embedded in your organization for 3 years, monitoring your activities. The tagging compound was meant to track you, yes, but not for corporate espionage. For national security. Simone felt the world tilt. Kang Minho's expression didn't change. Explain. Your merger with Genesis Pharma. The biotechnology you're acquiring. Someone in your organization is selling it to hostile foreign entities. Weapons-grade compounds, neurotoxins, genetic markers, all of it. The intelligence community believes you're either complicit or compromised. I was ordered to tag you to determine your involvement. I tried to tell them you were being framed. I had the logs showing the chairman's override codes, but my superiors wouldn't listen. They ordered the tag. They wanted to observe where you would run when the pressure intensified. And you chose tonight to do it? During the merger signing? Because tonight your chairman approved a shipment to Pyongyang for cases of neurological bioweapons. That's not corporate expansion, Minho. That's treason. The chairman, Kang Minho's mentor, his father figure, the man who'd built Kang Industries from nothing and had groomed Kang Minho to inherit the empire. Simone watched Kang Minho's face carefully, saw the moment the information landed, saw the betrayal flicker behind his eyes before he locked it down. You're lying, Kang Minho said softly. I have documentation. Financial transfers, shipping manifests, communications between your chairman and North Korean intermediaries. He's been using your name, your clearance codes. As far as anyone official knows, you're the one selling weapons to terrorists. Kang Minho was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed, the sound bitter and cold. Clever. Frame the air. Protect the legacy. When did he start? 7 months ago. Right after your quarterly medical examination. My medical examination. Kang Minho's voice went flat. What does that have to do with anything? David glanced at Simone, then back to Kang Minho. You don't know. Know what? Your chairman has been covering it up. The diagnosis. The reason he's been pushing experimental treatments. Minho, you have a hereditary degenerative brain condition. Early stage, manageable with the right treatment, but progressive. Your chairman's been selling bioweapons to North Korea. Not for money. He has plenty of that. He's trading for raw materials. Rare synthesized isotopes that are illegal in the West, but necessary for the experimental cure he's building. The silence in the garage was absolute. Simone watched Kang Minho's face. Saw the careful control fracture. Saw the vulnerability beneath the armor. That's impossible, Kang Minho said, but his voice lacked conviction. The microdoses you've been taking. They're not antidote to paralytic. They're experimental neural stabilizers. Your chairman convinced you they were immunity boosters, but they're keeping your brain chemistry balanced. Without them, you'd start showing symptoms within weeks. Memory loss, motor control issues. Eventually, total cognitive collapse. Kang Minho's hand went to his pocket where he kept his pill case. Simone had seen him take one in the car, a small gesture she'd dismissed as habit. How long? Kang Minho asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The chairman's been funding research for 9 months. He's convinced he can cure you, but the treatments he's pursuing aren't legal. They're not ethical. And they require resources that don't exist on the legitimate market. David stepped forward, hands raised. I'm not your enemy, Minho. Your chairman is. He's destroying your reputation, selling weapons to terrorists, and bankrupting your company's ethics to save your life. And he doesn't care who dies in the process. Kang Minho stood frozen, processing. Then he turned to Simone. Is it possible? What he's describing. Simone's mind raced through the science. Hereditary degenerative brain conditions are rare but real. If it's what I think it is, neural stabilizers would slow progression. And yes, experimental treatments exist, but they require specific resources. Genetic samples, stem cells from donors with rare immunity markers. She paused, dread coiling in her stomach. What exactly is the chairman researching? David pulled out a tablet, pulled up files. Proprietary neural regeneration. The donor requirements are highly specific. Rare genetic anomaly found in less than 0.001% of the population. He acquired Genesis Pharma specifically to access their employee health records and genetic database. He's been searching for a compatible donor. Simone's blood turned to ice. She knew that genetic anomaly. She'd been tested for it during her employment screening at Genesis. She'd been negative. But Jordan hadn't been tested. What's the anomaly? She asked, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. David read from the screen. Variant CCR5 Delta 32 with secondary apoepsilon 4 mutation. The combination makes the donor's neural tissue resistant to degenerative conditions. Simone finished. And allows their cells to be harvested for transplant without rejection. She looked at Kang Minho. The donor has to be a child. Adult cells don't work. How do you know that? Because I helped develop the protocol. Years ago, before I understood what Genesis was planning to use it for. Kang Minho stared at her, then at David. Does the chairman have a donor? David nodded slowly. He found one 4 weeks ago. Employee records from Genesis Pharma. Former employee, actually. Dr. Simone Laurent. He looked at Simone. Your son. The world tilted. Simone's son. Jordan with his missing teeth and his love of dinosaurs and his bright, beautiful brain. Jordan, who carried Simone's blood and a genetic gift that made him worth more than money. Where is he? Simone's voice was calm, empty. The calm before violence. Your neighbor's apartment. You said he was safe. The chairman's team deployed 22 minutes ago, David said. I tried to warn you, but you weren't answering your phone. They're extracting the child now. Simone ran. Kang Minho caught her before she reached the garage exit, his grip iron on her wrist. Wait. You can't. Let me go. Simone's voice was lethal, stripped of everything except maternal rage. Let me go, or I will hurt you. You'll get yourself killed. He pulled her back, both hands on her shoulders. The chairman's security is professional. You run in there alone, you die. And then who saves your son? I don't care. Yes, you do. He gave her a small shake, forcing her to focus. You care because if you die, Jordan has no one. So you're going to breathe and think and let me help you. Simone stared at him, chest heaving. Saw something in his eyes that looked almost like understanding. Like he knew what it felt like to have everything balanced on a knife's edge. Why would you help me? Because the chairman betrayed me. Because he's using my company to traffic weapons. Because apparently I'm dying and he didn't tell me. Kang Minho's jaw tightened. And because he's going after a child. Your child. That crosses a line even I won't cross. David approached cautiously. The extraction team is at the apartment now. If we move fast, we can intercept them before they get him to the airport. But we need to go now. Kang Minho released Simone, already moving toward the Audi. Where are they taking him? Private airfield in Teterboro, New Jersey. 45 minutes from here. We can make it in 22. Kang Minho opened the car door, looked back at Simone. Get in. We're ending this tonight. The drive was a nightmare of speed and silence. Kang Minho made calls, repositioning his security, coordinating with David's CIA contacts. Simone sat frozen in the back seat, her mind racing through scenarios. All of them ended with Jordan afraid, alone, being taken by strangers who saw him as raw material. She thought about the protocol she'd helped develop. The neural harvesting process. It wasn't fatal. Technically, they'd take spinal fluid, bone marrow samples, a small portion of neural stem cells from the brain stem. The donor would survive, but the procedure was invasive, painful, traumatic. And Jordan was 7 years old. Tell me about the chairman, Simone said, her voice distant. Kang Minho glanced at her. What do you want to know? Why he'd do this? Why he'd risk everything? Because he loves me, Kang Minho said it simply. He raised me after my parents died. Taught me everything I know about business, about survival. He built Kang Industries, and he built me. To him, I'm not just his protege. I'm his son, his legacy. And he'd sacrifice a child to save you. Apparently. Bitterness laced his voice. I always knew he was ruthless. I didn't know he was a monster. There's a difference. Kang Minho looked at her for a long moment. I think you understand the difference. You saved my life tonight. You didn't have to. You could have walked away. But you didn't. That's the difference between ruthless and monstrous. Ruthless protects what's theirs. Monstrous doesn't care what it destroys. They arrived at the corporate headquarters of Kang Industries, a glass tower in Midtown. 70 stories of steel and ambition. Kang Minho's private elevator took them directly to the executive floor where the chairman kept his office. The confrontation happened in a boardroom designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook the city. Snow still falling against the glass. A long mahogany table dominated the space. Expensive art on the walls. And at the head of the table sat the chairman. Park Jin-woo was in his 70s, but age hadn't softened him. Silver hair swept back from a face carved from stone. Eyes sharp and calculating. He wore a three-piece suit like armor, his hands folded calmly on the table as Kang Minho and Simone entered. "Minho." The chairman's voice was warm, paternal. "I wasn't expecting you tonight. Who's your guest?" "Dr. Simone Laurent, the ghost chemist you've been hunting." Kang Minho walked to the table, stood opposite his mentor. "And the mother of the child you just had kidnapped." The chairman's expression didn't change. "Strong accusations. Do you have proof?" "I have David Chin in custody. He's singing like an opera. Weapons sales, illegal research, human trafficking. All authorized under my name, using my clearance codes." Kang Minho leaned forward, hands flat on the table. "You framed me. You're destroying everything we built." "I'm saving your life," the chairman said it calmly, as if stating fact. "You have less than 2 years before the condition becomes symptomatic. 5 years before cognitive collapse. I'm not going to watch you die, Minho." "I won't." "So you kidnap children? Traffic bioweapons to terrorists?" "I do what's necessary." The chairman stood, moved to the windows. "You're young. You don't understand yet what it means to love someone more than your own soul. To watch them dying and know you have the resources to save them, but society's laws say you can't." "I'm not bound by their morality, Minho. I'm bound by my love for you." "Where is he?" Simone's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Where is my son?" The chairman turned, regarded her with the dispassion of someone evaluating livestock. "The child is being prepared for transport. The procedure is scheduled for tomorrow morning. He'll survive. You'll get him back." "You think I'll let you cut into my son's brain?" "I think you don't have a choice." The chairman returned to his seat, steepled his fingers. "I control this building, this company, this city's infrastructure. You're a fugitive with a warrant. Minho is a dying man who needs treatment. The child has genetic material that can save him. It's simple mathematics." "He's 7 years old," Simone said, her voice shaking with rage. "And he'll be 8, 9. He'll grow up, live a full life. The procedure is minimally invasive. He'll experience some discomfort, but children are resilient." The chairman's tone was reasonable, as if discussing a minor inconvenience. "Weighed against Minho's life, it's an acceptable cost." Kang Minho was silent, his face carved from stone. Simone watched him, waiting for him to speak, to defend her son, to show that he was different from this monster who'd raised him. "No," Kang Minho said finally. The word fell like a hammer. The chairman blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said no. You're going to release the child. You're going to shut down the research. And you're going to turn yourself into federal authorities." "Minho, you're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearly for the first time in months." Kang Minho's voice was steel. "You've been drugging me, lying to me, using my company to commit atrocities. You say you love me. This isn't love. This is obsession. This is control." He straightened. "I don't want to live if it costs a child's trauma. I don't want your cure if it requires becoming the kind of man who destroys innocence. You'll die. Then I die. But I die as myself. Not as your puppet." The chairman's face hardened. "You ungrateful." He pressed a button on the desk. "Security. Detain them." The doors opened. 4 men entered. Armed. Professional. Kang Minho didn't move. "You're really going to do this?" "I'm saving your life. Even if I have to save you from yourself." Simone's mind raced. For armed men, one exit, no weapons. The mathematics were brutal. But there was always another equation, another variable. "You're making a mistake," she said to the chairman. "The procedure you're planning won't work. I have the best scientists. You have scientists who are guessing. I designed the protocol. I know why it fails." She moved closer to the table, calculated and calm. "The genetic material degrades during extraction. You need a live donor, continuously connected. You can't just harvest and transplant. You'd need to keep Jordan hooked up to Kang Minho for weeks, months maybe. Is that what you want? To turn a child into a medical device?" The chairman's eyes narrowed. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Check your research. Check the failure rates. Every trial ended with donor rejection or recipient psychosis. Because you're not just transplanting cells. You're transplanting neural patterns, memories, identity. You do this procedure, Kang Minho won't be Kang Minho anymore. He'll be a hybrid. Part himself, part 7-year-old boy." She let that sink in. "Is that the son you want to save? Or do you just want to own something?" The silence stretched. The chairman stared at her, calculating. She's telling the truth. David Chin stepped into the room, flanked by 4 federal agents. "We've been tracking your research. Every test subject either died or went insane. The procedure doesn't work. It never worked. You're chasing a ghost cure." The chairman looked at Kang Minho, at Simone, at the agents now surrounding him. "You'll die," he said to Kang Minho, his voice cracking. "Without treatment, you'll die." "Then I'll die human," Kang Minho said softly. "Where's the child?" The chairman crumbled. Then the steel facade collapsed, leaving only an old man who'd lost everything. "Airfield," he whispered. "Hangar 4. They're loading him now." Kang Minho grabbed Simone's hand. "Let's go." They ran. The helicopter blades beat against the night air, a rhythmic thunder that drowned thought. Kang Minho piloted with the precision of someone who'd learned to fly before he'd learned to trust. Simone sat beside him in the co-pilot seat, her knuckles white against the safety harness. Below them, Manhattan's lights gave way to the industrial sprawl of Teterboro, a landscape of concrete and abandonment punctuated by the occasional working hangar. David's voice crackled through the headset. "Hangar 4 is the second building from the south end. 2 vehicles in the lot. Heat signatures show 5 people inside. 1 child-sized. Armed?" Kang Minho's voice was calm, focused. "Assume yes, but they're corporate security, not military. They won't shoot unless cornered." "Good." Kang Minho adjusted their approach, bringing the helicopter down fast. "Because I'm about to corner them." They landed in the parking lot with enough force to crack asphalt, the helicopter's spotlight flooding the hangar entrance. Kang Minho killed the engine and was out before the blades stopped spinning, Simone right behind him. The hangar door was steel, locked. Kang Minho pulled out his phone, typed something. The lock clicked open. "Override codes," he explained. "I own this airfield." Inside, the space was cavernous and cold. A private jet sat on the concrete, stairs deployed, engines warming up. 5 men in dark suits stood near the aircraft. And between them, held by the hand, was Jordan. He looked so small, so scared. His Spider-Man backpack hung from one shoulder, his favorite stuffed T-Rex clutched to his chest. When he saw Simone, his face crumpled. "Mama." Simone ran. She didn't think, didn't calculate. She just ran, closing the distance between her and her son with every ounce of speed she had. The men moved to intercept, but Kang Minho was faster. He didn't attack, didn't threaten. He just stood between them and Simone. His presence a wall. "Stand down," he said quietly. "This is over." "Mr. Kang," the chairman authorized. "The chairman is under federal arrest. And I'm giving you a choice. Walk away now or I destroy your lives. Financially, legally, professionally. Every stock option, every retirement fund, every reference. Gone." Kang Minho's voice was soft, deadly. Or you walk away, and tomorrow you wake up with a severance package that sets you up for life. No questions asked, no charges filed. The men looked at each other, looked at Jordan, looked at Kang Minho. They walked away. Simone dropped to her knees, pulling Jordan into her arms. Her son smelled like strawberry shampoo and fierce sweat, and Simone buried her face in Jordan's hair and shook with the force of relief. "I thought you weren't coming," Jordan whispered. "They said you sent them to pick me up, but they were scary, Mama. They didn't smile right." "I know, baby. I know. I'm so sorry." Simone pulled back, checked her son for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" "No. Just scared me." Jordan's eyes were huge, swimming with tears. "Can we go home?" "Yes. Yes, we can go home." Kang Minho stood nearby, watching them with an expression Simone couldn't read. When she looked up at him, he turned away, giving them privacy. David arrived 12 minutes later with federal agents and NYPD. They secured the scene, took statements, processed the security team. The chairman would face charges: human trafficking, illegal weapons sales, corporate fraud. Kang Industries would survive, but barely. The scandal would take years to overcome. Through it all, Simone held Jordan, unwilling to let him go. When the official interviews were done, Kang Minho approached them. He moved carefully, like someone approaching a wounded animal. Knelt down to Jordan's level. "Hi," he said softly. "I'm Minho. I'm a friend of your mom's." Jordan studied him with the brutal honesty of children. "You have pictures on your neck." "I do. They're called tattoos." "Do they hurt when they're being made?" "Yes. But after, they're just part of you." Mama has a scar on her arm. She says scars tell stories. Kang Minho smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. "Your mama is very smart. Scars do tell stories. They tell us we survived something hard." Jordan considered this, then offered him his stuffed T-Rex. "This is Rex. He protects me from bad dreams." "Rex is very fierce," Kang Minho said seriously, accepting the dinosaur. "Will he protect me too?" "Maybe, if you're nice to my mama." Kang Minho's eyes met Simone's over Jordan's head. "I'll try to be." They drove back to Manhattan in one of the federal vehicles. Jordan asleep in the back seat, his head on Simone's lap. Kang Minho sat up front, silent, staring out at the pre-dawn darkness. "What happens now?" Simone asked quietly. "Now? Damage control. Congressional hearings. Probable criminal investigation into my involvement." Kang Minho's voice was tired. "I'll probably lose the company. Definitely lose the merger. Everything I've built. I'm sorry." "Don't be. You didn't cause this." "I did. By trusting the wrong person. By not asking questions when I should have." He paused. "And by being worth saving, apparently. At least in the chairman's eyes." "Are you?" Simone asked. "Dying?" "Yes," he said it simply. "The diagnosis is real. Hereditary neurodegenerative condition. Progressive. Fatal. I have maybe 3 years before symptoms become severe." "And the treatment?" "There isn't one. Not a real one. Everything the chairman found was experimental, unethical, or impossible. I was dead the moment I inherited my father's DNA." He turned to look at her. "But I'd rather die as myself than live as a monster. You helped me remember that." They returned to Kang Minho's penthouse as the sun rose over the Hudson River, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Federal agents secured the building, but Kang Minho had convinced them to let Simone and Jordan rest before formal questioning. Jordan woke up long enough to be fed cereal and tucked into the guest bedroom, surrounded by pillows that cost more than Simone's monthly rent. He was asleep again in minutes, exhausted by fear and relief. Simone found Kang Minho on the balcony, watching the sunrise. She stood beside him in silence, the morning air cold against her skin. "The research notes," she said finally. "The ones I destroyed when I ran from Genesis. I have backups." Kang Minho looked at her sharply. "What?" "I encrypted them," hid them in distributed storage. I wasn't going to let Genesis weaponize my work, but I wasn't going to let it disappear either. It was years of my life. My legacy. She met his eyes. There's no cure for your condition in those notes. But there are treatments. Legitimate ones. Things that could slow progression, buy you time. Maybe decades. Why are you telling me this? Because you chose my son over your own life. Because you're dying and you still have things worth living for. She paused. And because maybe together we can do something good with the research. Something that isn't weapons or exploitation. Something that actually helps people. Kang Minho stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled, sad and genuine. You're offering to save me after everything. I'm offering to try. No guarantees. But I'm a good chemist. And you're a good man who made difficult choices under impossible circumstances. That's worth saving. What do you want in return? Safety. Real identities for Jordan and me. Enough money that I never have to choose between my son and survival again. She held his gaze. And a lab. A real one where I can work without looking over my shoulder. Done. Kang Minho extended his hand. Partners. Simone took his hand, his skin warm, calloused from work she couldn't imagine. Partners. They stood together as the sun climbed higher, burning away the night. Behind them, the city woke up. Ahead of them, an uncertain future. But for the first time in 4 years, Simone felt something like hope. The federal investigation took weeks. Simone and Jordan were placed in protective custody, a safe house in Brooklyn Heights with agents rotating shifts outside. It was comfortable, sterile, suffocating. Jordan adjusted better than Simone expected. Children were resilient that way, bouncing back from trauma with a speed that made adults jealous and ashamed. Kang Minho's situation was more complicated. Kang Industries' board voted to suspend him pending investigation. The media feasted on the scandal. Korean CEO's mentor arrested for bioweapon trafficking. Heir potentially complicit. Kang Minho's lawyers worked overtime, but the damage was done. His reputation, carefully built over a decade, crumbled in days. He called Simone every evening. Brief conversations about nothing important. How was Jordan? Had Simone been sleeping? Did she need anything? The questions were mundane, but beneath them ran a current of something deeper. Connection forged in crisis, tested by separation. But his voice grew rougher with each call. He'd flushed the chairman's stabilizer pills the night of the arrest, refusing to keep taking them now that he knew they were funded by child trafficking. Without them, the tremors were already starting. On the 19th day, David Adams visited their safe house. It's over, he said, settling into the government-issue sofa. The chairman confessed to everything. Full cooperation. Minho is clear. No charges. The company's board is voting tomorrow on his reinstatement. Simone felt relief and something else. Disappointment, maybe, that it was ending. That they'd return to normal. What about us? The warrants? Dismissed. Your patent theft charges were filed by Genesis Pharma on the chairman's orders. With him in custody and the company under new management, they withdrew everything. You're free, Dr. Laurent. You and Jordan both. Free. The word should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, uncertain whether to step forward or back. That night, Kang Minho came to the safe house himself. It was late, past midnight, and Simone had been unable to sleep. She was sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea, reading Jordan's homework when he knocked. The agents let him in without question. He'd been cleared, vetted, approved. Couldn't sleep either? He asked, standing in the doorway like he was afraid to enter uninvited. Apparently not. She gestured to the chair across from her. Tea? They sat together in the quiet kitchen, drinking tea that tasted like cardboard. The silence was comfortable, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with words. I resigned, Kang Minho said finally. Simone looked up sharply. What? From Kang Industries. Effective immediately. I recommended my COO for interim CEO. The board will ratify it tomorrow. Miho, you can't. I can. I did. He set down his mug. I've been running that company since I was 24. Building it, defending it, sacrificing everything for it. And for what? So I could spend my last 3 years in boardrooms and conference calls, dying slowly while lawyers argue over patents. He shook his head. I don't want that. I want something different. What do you want? He looked at her. Really looked, his eyes dark and intense. I want to build something that matters. With someone who understands what it costs. He paused. I want to offer you a partnership. A real one. A lab, funding, complete autonomy. We take your research, the legitimate applications, and we develop treatments that actually help people. No weapons, no exploitation. Just science in service of healing. Simone's heart hammered. That's a massive risk. My reputation is. Your reputation is that of a brilliant chemist who refused to let her work be weaponized. That's exactly the reputation I need. He leaned forward. I have money, Simone. More than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have connections, infrastructure, resources. What I don't have is purpose. You can give me that. And I can give you the freedom to work without fear. This isn't just about science, she said it softly, acknowledging the thing neither of them had named. No, Kang Minho's voice was rough. It's not just about science. I don't know what it is yet, but I know I don't want it to end. This. Us. Whatever we're building. Simone thought about Jordan asleep upstairs. Thought about 4 years of running, hiding, being afraid. Thought about Kang Minho's face when he'd chosen her son over his own cure. Where? She asked. What? Where would this lab be? Wherever you want. We can build it from scratch. Manhattan, Boston, San Francisco. Anywhere you feel safe. I want to be close to good schools. Jordan's education matters. Kang Minho smiled. Done. Anything else? I want final say on all research directions. No board oversight, no investors pressuring for profit over ethics. Agreed. And I want a contract that protects Jordan. If anything happens to me, he's taken care of. College fund, trust fund, everything. Already drawn up. My lawyer sent it yesterday. He pulled out his phone, showed her the document, reviewed by independent counsel. Jordan is protected for life, regardless of what happens to either of us. Simone read the contract, her trained eye catching the legal protections, the escape clauses designed to prevent exploitation. It was generous. Too generous. Why? She asked. Why do all this? Kang Minho set down his phone, reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch was electric, dangerous. Because 7 weeks ago, a woman I didn't know threw herself between me and death. She had every reason to walk away, to stay invisible, to protect herself. And she didn't. She chose to be seen. She chose to save me. His thumb brushed her knuckles. I'm dying, Simone. I have 3 years, maybe less. I don't want to spend them alone. I don't want to spend them building empires I'll never see completed. I want to spend them with someone who understands what it means to risk everything for something that matters. I'm not going to watch you die and then move on, Simone said, her voice breaking. I'm going to try to save you. I'm going to throw every ounce of my knowledge at your condition until I find something that works or I run out of time. That's what you're signing up for. I know. Kang Minho's smile was sad, beautiful. That's exactly what I'm signing up for. They sat there, hands linked across the cheap kitchen table, the future uncertain and terrifying and somehow full of possibility. Then Kang Minho's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression changed. We need to go. Now. What? Why? The chairman escaped federal custody 23 minutes ago. They think he's coming here. The world tilted. How? His lawyers got him transferred to a minimum security medical facility for his heart condition. He walked out during shift change. Kang Minho was already moving, pulling her toward the stairs. We need to get Jordan and leave. The agents converged as Simone ran to the bedroom. Jordan was asleep, curled around his stuffed T-Rex. Simone scooped him up. Jordan woke, confused, afraid. "Mama? We're going on an adventure, baby. Right now. Don't be scared." Kang Minho was coordinating with the agents, his voice sharp and commanding. "Extraction point is Central Park. We have a helicopter waiting." The power cut. The house went dark. Emergency lights flickering on after a 3-second delay. In that moment of blindness, Simone heard it. The whine of electronics dying. The click of magnetic locks disengaging. "Smart," Kang Minho muttered grimly. He cut the grid. The federal safety protocols force the mag locks to release during a power outage so people don't get trapped. He just walked right in. They moved toward the garage, but the door wouldn't open. The electronic locks had failed. They were trapped. Kang Minho pulled Simone and Jordan into the interior bathroom, the most defensible position in the house. The agents took up positions outside, weapons drawn. "How long until backup?" Simone asked. 12 minutes. He only needs 6. Because the chairman knew this house. He'd probably designed the security protocols himself. They waited in the dark. Jordan pressed between them, silent and shaking. Simone could hear Kang Minho's heartbeat, fast and steady. Could feel the heat of his body, the tension in his muscles. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "This is my fault. He's coming for me. No, he's coming for all of us. For his legacy." Simone held Jordan tighter. But he's not getting it. The bathroom door exploded inward. Not with force, but with gas. White chemical fog that stung eyes and throat. The chairman had come prepared. Kang Minho shoved a wet towel at Simone. Covered Jordan's face. "Don't breathe it." They stumbled out into the hallway, blind, choking. The chairman was there, silhouetted against the emergency lighting. He looked ancient, broken, and absolutely determined. "Minho," he said, his voice cracking. "I can still save you. Come with me. Let me finish what I started." "You started trafficking children." Kang Minho's voice was raw from the gas. "You started destroying everything I built. I started trying to save your life." The chairman moved closer. "You're dying. You're dying and you're too proud to accept help. But I won't let you die. I won't. Then you'll have to shoot me. Because I'm not going with you." The chairman raised a gun. Not pointed at Kang Minho. Pointed at Simone. "Her then. She has the research. She can synthesize the treatment. Give her to me or I shoot her and take the child anyway." Time slowed. Simone saw Kang Minho's eyes. Saw the calculation there. Saw him weighing her life against his freedom. She saw the moment he chose her. Kang Minho stepped between her and the gun. "No. You want me? Take me. But you leave them alone." "Minho," Simone grabbed his arm. "Get Jordan out," he said quietly. "That's an order, Dr. Laurent." The helicopter arrived before Simone could argue. Federal agents rappelled through the skylight, moving with military precision. The chairman was subdued, arrested, dragged away screaming about saving his son. Kang Minho collapsed the moment the threat was gone, his medical condition exacerbated by stress. They rushed him to Mount Sinai, where doctors stabilized him but confirmed what they all knew. The degenerative condition was accelerating. He had less time than anyone thought. Simone stood by his hospital bed, Jordan asleep in the chair beside her, and made a decision. "I'm taking you somewhere safe," she said when Kang Minho woke. "Somewhere the chairman can't reach, where I can work without interruption. And I'm not taking no for an answer." Kang Minho smiled weakly. "Where?" "My safe house. The one I built 4 years ago when I ran. The one no one knows about. You trust me with that?" "Yes." Simone took his hand. "I'd trust you with everything." The safe house was a converted lighthouse on the Rhode Island coast, for hours north of Manhattan. Simone had bought it under a shell company years ago, sinking the last of her legitimate savings into it before she ran. It had sat empty for 4 years, a frozen asset she couldn't sell or visit without triggering the financial alerts that would lead Genesis right to her. The structure was stone and steel, built to withstand Atlantic storms, isolated enough that neighbors were measured in miles rather than feet. Kang Minho was stable but weak when they arrived. Jordan chattering nervously in the back seat about the ocean and whales and whether lighthouses had ghosts. Federal agents had escorted them to the property line, then withdrawn. The chairman was back in maximum security, his lawyers' tricks exhausted. They were safe for now. The interior of the lighthouse was sparse. Furniture covered in sheets, windows overlooking gray water that stretched to the horizon. Simone had stocked it years ago with non-perishables and basic supplies, never imagining she'd return with a dying man and a frightened son. She settled Jordan in the upstairs bedroom with his tablet and snacks, extracting a promise that he'd stay put and yell if he needed anything. Then she returned downstairs to find Kang Minho standing by the windows, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "Lonely, but beautiful. It was supposed to be temporary. A place to hide until I figured out my next move." Simone stood beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "I never thought I'd bring someone here. I'm honored." He turned to look at her, his face drawn with exhaustion. "And I'm sorry for all of it. For the chairman, for dragging you into my nightmare." "You didn't drag me. I jumped." She met his eyes. "And I'd do it again." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Kang Minho's hand found hers, his fingers threading through hers with an intimacy that felt both natural and terrifying. "I need to set up a lab," Simone said, not pulling away. "Analyze your blood work, review the chairman's research, see what's salvageable. But the equipment I need. Already ordered." Kang Minho pulled out his phone with his free hand, showed her a list. Medical-grade centrifuge, spectrometer, refrigerated storage. All the basics. Arrives tomorrow. "I may be dying, but I'm still rich." "You're not dying." Simone squeezed his hand. "Not if I have anything to say about it." They spent the evening making the lighthouse habitable. Kang Minho moved slowly, his condition sapping his strength, but he insisted on helping. They uncovered furniture, aired out rooms, prepared dinner from the emergency supplies. Jordan helped, his 7-year-old energy a bright spot against the tension. After Jordan fell asleep, Simone and Kang Minho sat in the lighthouse's main room, a fire crackling in the stone fireplace. Rain had started again, drumming against the windows in rhythms that sounded almost like music. "Tell me about Jordan's father," Kang Minho said, his voice careful. Simone was quiet for a moment. "He was a mistake. A colleague at Genesis. Brilliant, charming, married. I was young and foolish and thought we had something real. When I got pregnant, he wanted me to terminate. I refused. He cut all contact." She stared into the fire. "Jordan doesn't know him. He asks sometimes, but I tell him the truth. Some people aren't built to be parents. And that's okay because I'm built to be enough for both of us. You're more than enough." Kang Minho shifted closer, the space between them shrinking. "He's lucky to have you. I'm the one who's lucky. She saved me. When I ran from Genesis, when everything fell apart, he was my reason to keep going. To not give up." Simone looked at him. "What about you? Any children hidden away somewhere?" "No. I never wanted to bring a child into my world. Too dangerous. Too much risk." His eyes held hers. "I told myself it was practical. But maybe I was just afraid of caring about someone that much. And now? Now I'm dying, so it doesn't matter." But the way he said it, the way his thumb brushed over her knuckles suggested it mattered very much. Simone leaned into him, her head finding his shoulder. He was warm, solid, real. His arm came around her, holding her against his chest where she could hear his heartbeat. Steady, strong, alive. "I meant what I said," she whispered. "I'm going to save you. And if you can't?" Then I'll hold your hand while the world ends, and I won't let you be afraid. Kang Minho's other hand came up, tilting her face toward his. His dark eyes searched hers, asking a question without words. Simone answered by closing the distance, her lips finding his in a kiss that tasted like smoke and desperation and hope. It wasn't gentle. It was 7 weeks of tension, fear, and denied attraction crashing together. Kang Minho's hand slid into her hair, angling her head as he deepened the kiss. Simone's fingers found the buttons of his shirt, needing to feel skin, to confirm he was real and here and alive. He broke the kiss, breathing hard. Simone, I'm dying. You shouldn't. Don't tell me what I should or shouldn't want. Her voice was fierce. I want you. I want this. I want whatever time we have, even if it's measured in months instead of years. You deserve better than a dying man. I deserve to make my own choices. And I choose you. She kissed him again, softer this time. Now shut up and take me upstairs before I change my mind. Kang Minho laughed, the sound rough and genuine. He stood, pulling her up with him, and they climbed the spiral stairs to the master bedroom. The room was small, dominated by a bed with a view of the ocean. Rain streaked the windows, the storm building in intensity. They undressed each other slowly, reverently. Simone traced the tattoos on Kang Minho's chest and arms. Dragons and phoenixes and Korean characters she couldn't read. Each one told a story, marked a moment. His body was lean, strong, beautiful in the low light. Kang Minho's hands on her were gentle, worshipful. He mapped the curves of her body with his fingers, his lips following. He paused at a scar on her shoulder. A chemical burn from her lab days. Battle scar, she whispered. Beautiful. He kissed it, then moved lower. They came together with a kind of desperate tenderness. Two people who'd survived too much to take anything for granted. The world outside disappeared. No chairman, no disease, no fear. Just skin and breath and the electric connection between them. Afterward, they lay tangled together, listening to the rain. Kang Minho's fingers traced patterns on her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck. I love you, he said quietly. I know it's too soon. I know it's complicated, but I need you to know. Before time runs out. Simone turned to face him, her hand cupping his cheek. I love you too. And we're going to have more time. I promise. But as she drifted into sleep, wrapped in his arms, she couldn't shake the fear that some promises were impossible to keep. The next morning, Simone woke to find Kang Minho unconscious. Not sleeping. Unconscious. His breathing shallow and rapid, his skin clammy with sweat. She checked his pulse, felt it racing irregularly, and panic clawed at her throat. Jordan. She grabbed her phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. Jordan, I need you to stay in your room, okay? Don't come downstairs. The paramedics arrived within 22 minutes, loading Kang Minho into the ambulance. Simone rode with him, holding his hand, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Jordan sat small and scared in the ambulance's jump seat, clutching his stuffed T-Rex. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what Simone already knew. Kang Minho's condition was deteriorating faster than expected. The stress of the past weeks had accelerated the neurodegeneration. Without aggressive treatment, he had weeks, maybe days. There's an experimental trial, the neurologist said, pulling Simone aside. Stem cell therapy combined with neural regeneration protocols. It's risky and proven, but it's the only option. The chairman's method relied on a continuous biological bridge. Barbaric and dangerous, the doctor explained. But using the synthetic bridge outlined in your encrypted notes, Dr. Laurent, we can achieve the same result with a simple stem cell harvest. No continuous connection needed. Do it, Simone said without hesitation. It requires a compatible donor. The genetic markers are extremely rare. Test me. Test Jordan. Test everyone. Simone's voice was steel. Whatever it takes. The tests came back within hours. Simone wasn't compatible, but Jordan was. His genetic anomaly, the same one the chairman had hunted, made him the perfect donor. The procedure wasn't the nightmare the chairman had planned. It was FDA approved, ethical, involving only a small bone marrow sample. Jordan would experience discomfort, but no lasting damage. But he'd still have to undergo anesthesia. Still have to face pain. Simone knelt before her son, taking his small hands. "Baby, I need to ask you something very important. Minho is very sick. He needs special cells from your body to help him get better. The doctors would need to do a small procedure. It would hurt a little, but you'd be asleep. And when you woke up, you'd be helping save his life." She paused. "But you get to choose. It's your body, your choice. And whatever you decide, I love you." "Okay." Jordan looked at her mother with those impossibly wise 7-year-old eyes. "Will it save him? Like you saved him at the restaurant?" "Yes, baby. It could save him." "Then I want to do it. Minho is nice. And he makes you smile." Jordan squeezed her mother's hands. "Plus, he said I could name his next company after a dinosaur. I want to make sure he keeps that promise." Simone pulled her son into a fierce hug, tears streaming down her face. "You are the bravest person I know." The procedure was scheduled for the next morning. Simone stayed with Kang Minho through the night, watching him sleep in the sterile hospital room. She worked on her laptop, analyzing his blood work, reviewing research papers, building treatment protocols for after the transplant. Kang Minho woke near dawn, his eyes clearer than they'd been in days. "Jordan agreed," Simone said softly. "The transplant is this morning." Kang Minho's face crumpled. "I can't let him. He wants to. And the procedure is safe. FDA approved. Minimal risk. He'll be uncomfortable for a few days, but he'll be fine." Simone took his hand. "Let him save you, Minho. Let us save you." He pulled her down, kissing her forehead. "I don't deserve either of you. Too bad. You're stuck with us." The transplant took 4 hours. Simone spent them in the surgical waiting room, drinking bad coffee and wearing a path in the linoleum. Federal agents had stationed themselves outside. The chairman's escape attempt had made them paranoid. Kang Minho's lawyers came and went, handling the media storm that had erupted when news of his hospitalization broke. When the surgeon finally emerged, Simone's heart stopped. "Both procedures went perfectly," Dr. Martinez said, pulling off her surgical cap. "Jordan is in recovery, asking for juice. Minho's body is already showing positive response to the stem cells. It'll take weeks to know if the treatment is working long-term, but initial signs are excellent." Simone's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the waiting room chair, relief flooding through her so intensely it hurt. "Can I see them?" "Jordan first. He's asking for you." Her son was small and pale in the recovery bed, but his eyes were bright. "Mama, they gave me the good juice. The kind with bubbles." Simone kissed his forehead, his cheeks, his nose. "You're so brave. So brave. Did it work? Is Minho going to be okay?" "The doctors think so. It'll take time, but yes. He's going to be okay. Thanks to you." The words hung unspoken between them. Kang Minho was in the ICU, still sedated, but stable. Simone stood by his bed, watching the monitors track his vital signs. She thought about the man who'd entered Azure 8 weeks ago. Dangerous, controlled, dying. And she thought about the man he'd become. Vulnerable, fierce, worth saving. The recovery was brutal. Kang Minho spent 3 weeks in the hospital, fighting through post-transplant complications. Simone moved into his room, working from a laptop in the corner, coordinating with the medical team. Jordan visited daily, bringing drawings and stories and an endless supply of dinosaur facts. The chairman was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms in a supermax facility. No parole. Kang Industries' board voted unanimously to remove him from any future involvement with the company. David Chin testified at the trial, his CIA cover blown, but his conscience clear. Kang Minho stepped down as CEO, transferring leadership to his COO. He kept majority shares, but withdrew from daily operations. Some called it weakness. Simone called it wisdom. 7 months later, they stood in a renovated warehouse in Cambridge, Massachusetts, the new home of Nexus Bioethics, their joint venture. The lab was state-of-the-art, funded by Kang Minho's liquidated assets and Simone's reclaimed intellectual property. They'd assembled a team of researchers committed to developing treatments without exploitation, to advancing science without weaponization. The grand opening was small, private. Jordan cut the ribbon with oversized scissors, grinning gap-toothed for the cameras. Federal regulators toured the facilities, gave their approval. Genesis Pharma's new management sent a congratulatory statement and a sizable grant. That evening, they returned to the lighthouse. It had become their home. Jordan enrolled in the local elementary school, Simone commuting to the lab 3 days a week, Kang Minho working remotely. The isolation suited them. The peace healed them. Simone prepared dinner while Kang Minho helped Jordan with his homework at the kitchen table. The scene was so domestic, so normal, it made her chest ache. This was what she'd fought for. This quiet, this safety, this family she'd built from the wreckage of her old life. After Jordan went to bed, Kang Minho opened a bottle of wine. The same vintage from that night at Azure. Yamazaki 18-year whiskey. He poured 2 glasses, handed one to Simone. She took it, studied the amber liquid. Should I be worried? Always. Kang Minho's eyes sparkled. But not tonight. Simone swirled the whiskey, inhaled its bouquet. Oak, smoke, fruit. No metallic tang. No shimmer. Just whiskey. She took a sip, let it roll over her tongue. Safe, she whispered, handing him the glass. Kang Minho drank, maintaining eye contact. When he lowered the glass, he smiled. The real smile, the one that transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. Thank you, he said. For everything. For seeing me, for saving me, for giving me a reason to want to live. Thank you for letting me. Simone moved closer, her hand finding his. For trusting me with your life. With your future. Our future. Kang Minho pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant. A sapphire set in platinum. Marry me. Not because I'm dying. The doctors say I'm in full remission. Marry me because I can't imagine waking up without you. Because Jordan deserves a father who shows up. Because I love you more than I thought I could love anything. Simone stared at the ring, tears blurring her vision. She thought about the woman she'd been 7 months ago. Invisible, afraid, running. And she thought about the woman she'd become. Seen, brave, building something that mattered. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Kang Minho slid the ring onto her finger, pulled her into a kiss that tasted like whiskey and promises, and the future they'd fought so hard to claim. Outside, the lighthouse beams swept across the dark water, guiding ships safely home. Later, they stood on the lighthouse balcony, wrapped in blankets against the December cold. The ocean was calm tonight, stars reflected in its surface like scattered diamonds. Do you ever regret it? Kang Minho asked. Spilling that whiskey. Saving me. Everything that came after. Simone leaned into him, his arms solid around her shoulders. She thought about the terror, the danger, the moments when she'd been sure they'd lose everything. And she thought about Jordan's laughter, about the lab they'd built, about the man beside her who'd chosen love over death. Not for a second, she said. You were worth saving. So were you. Kang Minho kissed the top of her head. We saved each other. Below them, the lighthouse beam continued its eternal rotation. A warning, a promise. A light in the darkness for anyone brave enough to navigate toward it. And inside, Jordan slept, dreaming of dinosaurs and science and a future bright enough to chase away any shadow. If you love the chemistry between the chemist and the wolf, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought. Which moment made your heart race? What would you have done in Simone's position? Until next time, stay dangerous, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the most powerful love stories begin with a single act of courage. I'll see you in the next one, my fierce hearts.